Everyone, and
Yeah.
I'll
let you do it.
Well, yeah, there we go. No, it won't. David, can you mute yourself?
Sorry, it won't let me mute.
If you mute yourself, then David, that'll be great. Could I welcome everybody to the Education Scrutiny Performance meeting? Particular welcome to Jen Rayner, who's joined us, the Cabinet Member, Helen Morgan-Rees, the Director of Education, Damien Beach, and of course John Owen, the Head of Bishopston Primary, and very importantly, Max, Iris, Jacob and Esme. So really welcome, and welcome to everyone else as well. But welcome to the four of you from the school plus John. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have one apology, Councillor Linda James. Shall I do the roll call now?
Do you want to do that? Yes.
Okay, I'll just go through the names of everybody who is here. So I'll start with the councillors on the panel. So we've got Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Yes.
Cyril Anderson.
Yes.
Mike Day.
Yes.
Mike Dirk.
Yes.
Stephen Gallagher.
Yes.
David Helliwell.
Yes.
Beverly Hopkins.
Yes.
Sue Jones.
Yes.
Miles Langstone.
Yes.
Linda Tyler Lloyd. Alexander Roberts. I think he's here, but his microphone's strange, isn't it? So I've seen him there. Dave Anderson Thomas. We also have Councillor Jennifer Rayner, who's a Cabinet Member, and Helen Morgan-Rees, the Director, and Damien Beach, the Head of Primary Phase Team. And we also have John Owen, the Head Teacher from Bishopston Primary School, and 4 pupils. We've got Max and Iris from Year 5, and Jacob and Esme from Year 2. And back over to you, Lyndon.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, are there any disclosures of personal and presidential interests?
Can I say, Chair, no disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest, but I'm just checking that my attendance was noted because my audio cross was still on when I spoke.
Yeah, it was.
It's lovely. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Chair.
It's not a disclosure, but well, it could. I'm obviously a governor in Bishopston Primary School, so I'll just mention that because obviously we've got the head and the 4 children here. Prohibition of whip votes and declaration.
Sorry, Lyndon, can I say that I have a son working for the Education Department, but I've got dispensation.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Any others?
Lyndon, I've got. I'm a governor at the school.
Yes, thank you very much. Somebody's got Microsoft. There we go. Prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. Anything at all? Not. Right. The next item, very quickly on the agenda, is letters and minutes. You've got my letter following our last meeting to the Cabinet Member and the Cabinet Member's response, the minutes, and of course the points that we raised, which went to the Cabinet on the budget. Are there any questions on those? Okay, can't see any hands up, so that's good. Thank you very much. Are there any public questions?
There are no public questions today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michelle. The next item on the agenda is the blended and remote learning and the thoughts of the 4 pupils from Bishopston Primary School. So could I hand over to John, who is John Owen, who was the head of the school, and welcome, John.
Thanks very much indeed, and lovely to be with you. Thanks so much for inviting us and these children to come and have a chat with you today. I'm sure you realise that this has just come off the back of the children talking to governors through the Pupil Welfare Committee at school back in January, and Councillor Jones said after that, it'd be great if we could just sort of do a repeat session. So yeah, without any practice, we'll just run through. I've got just a few questions that we put to the children, and hopefully you'll just be able to enjoy their feedback at this time. So question number one, I'll go to the younger children first of all. So Esme and Jacob. So Esme and Jacob, when you are ready to say something, if you are willing to just unmute yourselves, use your skills and talk us through. So we wanted to know how you were during lockdown. How did you manage to, during lockdown, keep yourselves healthy? How did you stay healthy during lockdown?
I did karate and gymnastics.
What a good idea. Some karate and some gymnastics going on there. What about you, Jacob? How did you manage to stay healthy?
I felt a bit, I did feel a bit inside and a bit hot and bothered, and it's really hard to get to exercise. But in the end, I did get a bit of exercise and I got quite healthy, but I'm much more healthy now.
Oh, okay. So what do you think has made the difference there, Jacob? Do you think it's coming back to school that's helped?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now that's what we want to hear. We want to hear that we love schools. This is great. Okay, well, some of you older guys, come on then, Iris. Come on then, Max. What are your thoughts then? You know, how did you manage to stay healthy? Because you look super healthy during that very challenging time.
I, at home with mum and mainly dad, were outside a lot because we live in an area in Newton, so we can get out to many places. So we can just walk down to Underhill Park. We can walk down to Langland. We can walk down to Caswell. So we've got areas in which we can do a lot of activities, and we have bikes, so we can just go down the hill and down to like Clyne Valley and then along all the way and do a 14-mile circuit.
Wow, that's impressive. Come on then, Iris. What about you, love?
I was going on tons of walks with my family and cycles and stuff.
Okay, great. So it seems to me that all of you have done pretty well at managing to stay healthy during this time. Well, so in a sense, that was almost some of the positive things that you were able to tell us about there. What about the challenges? Because actually lockdown wasn't an easy time. What challenges do you think you felt during lockdown that you could share with these people now to say, well, this is what I found difficult, perhaps? And perhaps this time we'll start with the older ones, and then I'll come to Esme and Jacob. So Max or Iris, are you happy to kick us off for this one? So what were the challenges during lockdown?
Not seeing people in person, because part of the things that I most enjoy about exercise is, especially football, because that's probably my favorite exercise, is playing it with people, doing things with people in real life rather than trying to do things through a screen.
Sure, thanks, Max. Iris?
I found challenging in lockdown was definitely not being able to see friends and family, and the work. There was no one there to push us, when we're doing it. Now, because we're in school, the teachers are there to push us.
Okay, that's really interesting, Iris. So your point there, that one of the challenges was that actually, I mean, I know that you got incredibly supportive mum and dad, but still, you just felt like you didn't have the teachers there sort of pushing you, being able to kind of move you on. Iris, just so you know, darling, you sucking on that straw, that's really loud on the screen. So maybe just put that one down for a moment. Come on then, Esme and Jacob, you feed back to us. What were your challenges in this time?
My challenges were staying with my siblings because they're really annoying sometimes, and I barely got to do anything really.
Yeah, that was a real challenge, for a lot of us. Thankfully, I don't have to live with my siblings anymore. But I can imagine if I was at home with my twin brother when we were younger, my poor mother, she'd have been crying every night. So I'm actually pitying your mum there, Jacob. What about you, Esme? What can you tell us, darling?
I missed my friends and my family because some of my cousins live very far away.
Yeah, no, that does sound like a real challenge. So, yeah, we really appreciate you sharing that with us. So, okay, we've thought about then how you stayed healthy. We've thought about the challenges. Tell us, did you enjoy the home learning? Because your teachers work really hard to try to provide for you. Can you tell us about the home learning and were there any highlights for you with the home learning? So, who should we go to first? Jacob, can I go to you first?
Yeah. I think I liked home learning because I got to see both my friends and my family.
Okay, so just being able to log on and see some of your friends on the class Teams link or something like that, but at the same time your parents were in the room and you liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Esme? What was good about home learning for you?
I liked the work that they put on, and my favourite work was when we had to do a spider diagram about an eye or animal.
Oh, cool. That does sound like a very cool bit of work you did there. Okay, Iris, what about you, darling? What was the highlight of home learning? Or
When it was like it was like a week ago, we dissect a daffodil. It was really fun.
Cool. That does sound like a good. And are you able to name any of the bits of the daffodil?
There was a corona, which I thought was really funny because.
Okay. Linked to with the virus. Okay. Well, all right, you, Max.
I found it doing the home learning okay. Yeah, and my favourite tasks doing it was mummifying an apple. Sorry if you can hear my phone going off there. It's mummifying an apple in bicarbonate of soda and salt, and like Iris, dissecting a daffodil. So you had bits like the corona, the ovaries, the pistil, the outer leaf, the outer petals, the inner petals.
Wow. Okay, that's very impressive. So that's great. That so it sounds like some of those practical tasks were some of the things that you guys seem to enjoy, the older ones. That's great. Okay, well, I've only just got a couple more questions. So my next one is, do you feel that now in school, of course, teachers are working all the time to support you to make progress? That's what we're trying to do. Whether it's in your literacy, in your numeracy, whether it's in your relationships with other people, whether it's to do with sport, with art, we're all about progress. How can we get you from here, where you are, and keep progressing? Well, of course, lockdown is a big, big challenge. So did you feel that during lockdown, you could still say you've made some progress? Okay. So Jacob, what about you? Did you feel that you made progress?
Yeah, I think so. Not as much progress as usual because I used to make lots of progress in school, but I still got a bit getting added to my brain, but not as much as before because it's just a bit funner being in school. I think.
Yeah, it's a bit funner in school. Yeah, I agree with you. For me, it's been great to get back, and I absolutely concur with that. It's just funner. Esme, what about you, darling? Do you feel like you made progress?
Yeah, because I've improved my handwriting and my spelling.
Excellent. Okay, that's a really good thing to improve. That's going to help us with our inspection as well. So I'm really pleased to hear that. What about you, Max?
Yeah. I think I've made a lot of progress. My mum and dad at home push me as far as I'll go. So they will push me on my handwriting. And if there's a sentence that isn't joined up, they'll say, make sure that next time you do that, your sentence is joined up. Or when I'm doing maths, they'll say, don't do 2-star, do 3-star, and if there is a 4-star, do that.
What do you mean by 3-star, 4-star?
Because in class or on home learning, we have it ranked from 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. So 1-star is the easiest, 3-star is the hardest. So, and sometimes we call it fireballs to go with the mascot.
Oh, cool. Okay. Iris, what about you, darling? Did you make any progress?
A little bit, but obviously not as much as I would in school, because they push us, and like it's really different at home.
Sure.
Because like there's there.
Yeah, really, really helpful. Such helpful comments. And do you know what I'm particularly pleased at? That most of you don't feel you made quite as much progress as you made in making school, because that makes me feel like I can still have a job. No, so I'm delighted that actually there's still a good reason for you to come to school. Well, my last thing then is just to ask you, is it good to get back to school? Does it feel good to get back to school, and why? Okay, so let's start with you this time, Max.
Yes, I think it's much better to come back to school. So just so you can see people and work with people, because they're like everyone in the school. There are people you haven't seen for ages, and even though it's working with them, which might not be your or their favourite thing, it's still working with someone else apart from your mum and dad, who, if they're working, you're going to drive round the bend.
Okay, Max. Well, that's a helpful answer. Iris, what about you, my darling? Does it feel good to get back to school?
100%. It's so much better because now like there's people to push us, and we can see our friends, and we don't always have to work on our own anymore because we can go in groups and partners.
Super. Okay, great. Esme, what about you? Does it feel good to get back to school?
Yes, because I get to see my friends and my teachers.
Cool. Jacob, finally, have the last word here. What does it feel like to get back to school? Does it feel good?
It feels brilliant because I get to get way more exercise, because I don't really get outside that much. I probably pretty much just stay inside and run around there.
Okay. Well, guys, as your head teacher, I'm really grateful for you. Just talking these adults through. They're really important people, and they'll have really appreciated the fact that you've been so honest and told them the things that you've told them today. So thank you so much.
Can I say there's a couple of hands up here before you disappear, and the first is Jen Rayner. Jen.
Thank you. I hope I'll stay with you because my husband's on a meeting in another room, which means connectivity is a bit flaky around here. Can I first of all thank the 4 pupils for sharing their feelings on what it was like working at home. It's been very useful for us. And then could I ask the head 2 questions, please? Mr. Owen, you asked your pupils what progress they felt they made. What progress do you think you made during this period? And the second question is, I've mentioned my connectivity problems. What's the connectivity issues you had in your school? How many MiFi devices did you have to send out? How many additional laptops or tablets did you have to supply? What was the percentage of additional equipment you had to draw down? But let's first of all hear how you progressed during this interesting period.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of my own progress, I would say that I learned to, as a head teacher, to kind of make sure that well-being is absolutely at the fore. And in terms of staff, and children, that I mean, as a school, our motto is we care for one another and we try to be the best that we can be, and that means something in our school, that motto. But yeah, more than ever, we made sure that was at the forefront. And probably in terms of just a few extra bits of learning, I don't doubt my ICT skills came on a little bit during it all, and so that was a personal kind of gain as well. Yeah, in terms of how we dealt with the children in the school where there wasn't devices or things like that at home, we didn't, in terms of getting out support to get people on the internet, that wasn't such a challenge for us. There was only a few handful of families that we kind of gave out dongles to support. But yes, when it came to the laptops and iPads, in terms of percentage, say about 5%. So not a massive amount at all. That just wasn't a major challenge for us. But yeah, we very, very quickly identified which children we all the time were tracking well-being throughout it all. And whenever we saw that there was a need digitally, it was very, very easy thing for us to deal with. And the reason it was easy was just simply because there wasn't such a huge amount that, as you well know, I've got a twin who teaches in Town Hill School, and in a school like that, there's considerably more of a challenge to actually kind of meet that need.
Thank you, Mr. Owen, and thank you for Max for being so patient.
Max, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, there's just one thing I'd just like to say is, as a year 6 myself, it'd be nice if COVID rules are relaxed enough to do so, and near the end of the year, if there was if possible, a residential organised for the year 6s and possibly the year 5s who missed their residential, especially for the year 6s, as they missed it last year and this year.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And Mr. Owen, I hope you're going to note that. Yes. Are there any? Mike Day's got his hand up. Yeah.
I think it goes without saying that we're all thrilled to hear the children, and I could see Mr. Owen beaming with a big smile because he's so proud of you. I think that's a wonderful reflection on yourselves and also reflection on the school. So, thanks to you all for coming along and sharing with us today, and thanks to Mr. Owen and his colleagues for doing what they've been able to do to make your return to school an enjoyable one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments from anyone else? Anybody else? No. Well, it leaves me to say thank you very much to Max, Iris, Jacob and Esme. You've been really the stars of the show. Thank you very much. And big thanks also to John Owen. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thanks a lot. So guys, you can log out now. If you didn't take that as a hint, you're off now. But many thanks all. Take care. I'll see some of you again soon.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Mr. Owen.
Great, thanks. Thanks very much. Obviously, give us a bit of a flavour of what the children thought of lockdown, and obviously, I think teachers have never been more valued. You can see they're all waiting to get back to school, and I think that is a big plus for everyone. Right. The next item on the agenda is a verbal update from Councillor Jen Rayner and from Helen Morgan-Rees, the Director of Education, on the recovery from COVID. So I don't know who's going to kick off first, or?
I think Helen is best prepared to start, because not only has she been planning in Swansea, she also has wider All Wales connections as well.
Great, Helen.
Thank you, Jen. So really positive update in terms of our return to education and where we are with recovery. So obviously we've got the immediate recovery in terms of coming back to school. You all know that our primary schools were fully returned for the first time this week. During the first couple of weeks, we saw about 100 cases of children having to self-isolate across 5 of our schools. So we're not out of the woods in terms of community transmissions. We need to make that very clear. We're not fully recovered despite the fact that primary schools are back. We've also seen our secondary schools return partially this week. So at the start of the week, we had our year 11s and year 13s return. And then today, our years 10 and 12 returned to school. And to date, we've had quite a number of cases in terms of pupils having to isolate. So it's quadrupled since last Friday. So I can say that where we had about 100 cases self-isolating last Friday, it's looking to exceed 400 by tomorrow. So we're taking weekly reports on that. But obviously it doesn't mean that COVID is spreading in our schools. It just means that 1 or 2 cases are entering from the community, and then we're taking precautions to make sure that everybody's kept safe and they're required to self-isolate. So in terms of the immediate, we have also on the 12th of April, the full return of our secondary schools from the 12th. We have given them some flexibility if they need a planning day to speed up to full operations by the 13th. We're willing to accommodate that. And obviously our secondary schools are keenly now trying to recover what's left of the academic year in terms of centre determined grades and providing evidence to ensure that those grades are given to the exam year groups. So that's the immediate kind of recovery. In terms of our wider recovery plan, obviously we met corporately yesterday for the first time really to consider some of the work streams we have in education around recovery, and with the Policy Development Committee on the 10th of March, which was last week, we've shared some of those themes, some positives obviously coming out of COVID, but also a need to look in earnest at where we are with some of the learning loss considerations, and also looking at what it means really in terms of our planning going forward, with the need to look at vulnerable children in particular, well-being as a key theme as the Bishopston primary pupils and head teacher alluded to, the well-being of pupils, and moreover the well-being of schools, staff, practitioners and leaders alike is something that we need to ensure is built into our recovery plan. So what we're trying to do in our recovery plan is consider how we reacted during the pandemic over the last year and build on the positives and look at areas that we would like to sustain in terms of our practice. So that is our plan, and we will be sharing with colleagues in primary schools. We've already done it with secondary schools, some of those themes going forward. So we've still got some work to do in terms of building up to full operations. We've got some work to do to plan for September, and then beyond that in terms of the longer term recovery. It'll probably take us a few years to recover and to reset things, but positively we've got a lot to build on in terms of what COVID has given us in terms of new opportunities to work in different ways.
Great. Thank you very much. Jen, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you. I really must pay tribute to all our teachers and head teachers and to the education staff on the phases of the return. It's not just a one-off. Every additional reopening, new group going into schools has required additional risk assessments, redesigning spaces within schools to keep pupils safe and to meet the guidelines. I'm extremely impressed in the secondary sector at the speed and accuracy we've had of getting masks out for teachers and pupils, and also the lateral flow testing. I have to agree very much with Helen, and I see Kate is here, and Damien and the head. The first phase of the return has to be well-being, and assessing that first and making everybody comfortable. I've always firmly believed that a happy child learns much faster and in greater depth than someone agitated and nervous and looking after their shoulders. So I think we're on a good track, but I have to say this is because we've got a good sound base of some high quality schools and leaders in our schools caring for our young people. So this is unfolding. I am beginning to flinch at the words catch up, because it sounds as if there is a finite body of knowledge which we can learn and then test at the end, whereas it is in fact putting in the skills, the communication skills, the mobility skills that were the backbone of the learning. And as you know from Mr. Owen in your own school, Lyndon, schools are really concentrating on this element. There's additional funding, there's additional staff. Some of the new employees will require support from the existing staff, so we'll have to balance out the old and the new. But at this stage, I am confident. However, as Helen has said, community transmission is still a worry. We've had one secondary school where, again, exam classes come back, really, really important at this time of assessments, looking forward to the next phase and the transitions they're going to make. And yet a large group then has to be sent home to further blended learning. So I would ask everyone to really emphasise the importance of social distancing and care. The vaccination is not a magic bullet. We have to take all the proposals that we've looked at and know that have worked and make sure that we follow those through into the summer and see how it goes. We have a date for the return of more or less all the pupils for 2nd of April. It would be horrible if we were back in lockdown by May. So my appeal is, please, whatever you can, social media, contacts, stress, this is not over by a long way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And you know, when certainly when Helen mentioned the number of people who had to be sent home to self-isolate and so on from the schools, it shows how just a handful of people, you know, can affect, you know, 400, you said, wasn't it? You know, actually, so it is vitally important we go that extra mile. Mike, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Lyndon. I mean, first of all, just underline what Jen said. I think we all really appreciate the efforts that have been made to ensure that the return to school has been as seamless as possible, and you know, totally support Jen in terms of, you know, focusing on pupil welfare and staff welfare as well, to make sure that people are kept completely safe and that their mental health needs are addressed. There's one specific issue I'd like to raise, not by way of criticism, but just by highlighting to see if there's anything that we can do, and that's in connection with children who have to self-isolate, and it may be for a period of less than 5 days, particularly children in receipt of free school meals. I understand that it's not been possible to provide provision for those pupils who have to self-isolate for less than 5 days. And I'm just wondering whether there's a way in which we could address that particular issue to enable those families, particularly under stress at the moment, who, you know, whose children have been into school and having to come home because of coming into contact either in the community or within the school with other pupils. So I just wanted to kind of flag that. I'm not expecting necessarily any response unless you know, Helen or Kate could provide one, but I just would like to see if there's a way of doing that, whether, you know, schools could be delegated some funding or ability to deliver themselves, which I think they'd probably be prepared to do for those few cases. It's not a vast number, but I think there's a few cases where pupils might be put at some disadvantage in that way.
Helen, would you?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jones. Yeah, in response to Councillor Day, we will consider what's possible and practical in terms of our operations and what we can do in that respect.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other?
Could I just?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
This came up in almost a fortnight in the guidance. As you know, we've been operating on the 2-week basis so far for food boxes and BACS payments. I think once we are back to a full canteen service from the 12th of April, we will have more flexibility to do daily bags, and there is funding available for us to reclaim, not necessarily at the full rate as for the holidays and for the full lockdown, but yes, this is an issue I know catering have been concerned about. We have 2 schools who are not in the SLA for catering, and we would encourage those schools to make the same kind of provision.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody? Oh, great, thank you, Helen and Jen, for that. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, number 8, is the Pupil Development Grant, and again, it's this time it's Jen and Damien. Welcome, Damien.
Thank you. Thanks. Jen, you happy for me to go? Yeah,
you're on mute again.
No, it's fine. I can lip read, it's fine. Right. Michelle, is it okay for me to share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, bear with me a moment. Okay, so I'll take you through the presentation. I won't be able to see hands or monitor the chat, I'm afraid. So it's more like, unfortunately, a broadcast. So I'll take you through it, and then at the end, hopefully, if you've got questions or comments, I'll be able to respond to them then with the help of colleagues. So it's an update on Pupil Development Grant, which, as you know, runs financial year. So we're actually coming to the end of this year's in just a couple of weeks' time. We don't know next year's allocation yet, but back in May 2019, the PDC supported recommendations regarding the grant. Those recommendations including appointing a senior leader within the school to champion pupils who are eligible for FSM, optimise the progress of more able and talented pupils, establish a PDG plan that clearly identifies eligible pupils, undertake regular tracking, include the provision and evaluation of activities and resources used to support the learning of LAC pupils, and undertake an annual review of the intervention strategies to be evidenced and undertaken by the leadership team. So that gives you a flavour of the recommendations that the Policy Development Committee supported. So through our autumn term support visits, which, as you can appreciate, this academic year were mostly held virtually, the PDG formed part of the agenda for those visits. So we were able to glean a lot of information, which is what has helped me share some of that with you today. So what we found out during the visits, which is reflected in, this reflects the recommendations that I talked about a moment ago, you can see on the screen. It is worth noting that schools should publish their plans on their website, and these plans can be incorporated into the school's strategic plan. Welsh Government talk about that in terms of reducing bureaucracy, and their new school improvement guidance reiterates that your plans can become, incorporated into one strategic plan. Some like to separate them, but some schools like to have them as a sort of catch-all document, because your school development plan, your strategic plan should also be published. But I won't read the bullet points on the screen. You can see them. But you can see that they are addressing the recommendations that I mentioned on the previous slide. And then some figures for you. You can see there's a big difference. These are just primary schools, the total amount there, but there's a big difference between the lowest and the highest amount. It's £1,150 per pupil. So you can see in one of the schools that would equate to 3 pupils in our lowest. And such a huge difference then for some of the highest schools. I mean, the primary highest there, you'll notice on the next slide, is bigger than some of our comprehensive schools allocations. And you can imagine this grant becomes hugely relied upon in the schools, in terms of staffing, etc. So the secondary totals then, again, it's interesting to note the differences. And special schools are also on that page. Just the figures for your information. The next slide, it's a little bit of a busy slide. I hope you can see it. It talks about what's eligible expenditure. I could talk to you about just briefly about transitional protection and for free school meals. It's only for the meal and not anything else. So schools shouldn't be providing support for school trips and the like. This is for those pupils on transitional protection. So that can be a little confusing for families and officers in the authority when they're dealing with uniform grant, etc. But to come back more to the eligible expenditure, I've seen draft guidance, which is hot off the press. It's still in draft, March this year, just a week old, and it talks about eligible expenditure being it's used to support EFSM or other eligible learners, but it doesn't have to be restricted to those learners. Many broader interventions, such as professional learning for teachers, will create benefits for all. Although this is a positive, attention shouldn't stray away from the eligible learners who receive this extra funding because of disadvantage. And it goes on to talk about head teachers should ensure adequate resources are targeted. And it actually particularly mentions Key Stage 3 and their attainment as per the expectations of the minister. So it is quite I found it, and as a head teacher I can say this as well, it's actually quite a flexible grant, because sometimes the restrictions can be quite constraining, but I found the PDG quite a flexible grant to use in school, and I'll give you some examples of what it is being used on in Swansea later on. Next slide, it's the same slide but in Welsh, because I couldn't put them next to one another, as you can see, for obvious reasons. So that's in your pack for those of you who'd rather look at it through the medium of Welsh. And here we get to then examples of spend. Some interventions are more successful than others, and the best approaches are not always the most expensive. What should be consistent, though, is that whatever approach schools are using is that they're research and evidence-based. And there's some examples on the screen, and as previous slides suggested, they would potentially benefit all learners in a school, the mental health, the well-being, etc. And you'll see, Councillor Rayner's mentioned well-being, Helen's mentioned well-being, John Owen mentioned well-being, and you'll see that coming through strongly in the next few slides. So here there's more examples of spend in Swansea. The next few slides are about spend in Swansea, actually. As I said at the beginning, this information was gleaned as part of the autumn visits. So, and there you'll see trauma-informed attachment. They're all coming under that sort of umbrella, if you like, of well-being. Some of these will be training. Some of these will be purchase of perhaps speech and language. You can buy into something called Language Link, which is an annual subscription, which again will benefit all pupils, but perhaps our most disadvantaged children would benefit the most from those programs. And again, this reflects the recommendations, the tracking one in particular. There's some repetition of Welcome was mentioned on the previous slide, well-being was mentioned on the previous slide, but as I said, sometimes it's a subscription to a program or a purchase of a resource, but the spend can also be used to implement those programs then, and perhaps releasing staff to do that, to carry out the implementation, or to liaise with families, as you can see there, the third bullet point. Further examples here, and others that I can refer to from actual plans. Not all of them, for obvious reasons, took place, but an interesting idea in Clwyd Primary was to engage in work experience with some of their children and businesses. So it would be really interesting to explore that when we're back to some sort of normality, if you like. There's forest school sessions have been facilitated for pupils. The homework club for parents and pupils twice weekly is a really interesting idea, and you'll see that referred to when we look at the impact in a moment. And the well-being rooms, this is something I can talk about from experience as a head. We created a well-being or nurture room in my school, and they're quiet rooms, almost rooms of sanctuary, if you like, because primary schools are busy, sometimes very stimulating places, and just a quiet room is what some children react to more positively, if you like. And then I've talked about the purchase of programs like Language Link, etc. But my concern, you'll notice on the last but one bullet point, again comes back to safeguarding. That's a safeguarding program, that is, that more and more schools are using. Really good program. I used it myself as a head teacher. Again, linking to well-being, so that theme is coming through again. And the art therapy is something that they've explored in Talacopa. So you know, some really innovative use of the grant throughout Swansea's primaries. So I've mentioned well-being coming through time and time again. And this week, a whole school approach to well-being was published, all 73 pages of it. So that came out this week. It's always been important, but it's really taking front and centre stage. And this might be, I'm not saying COVID's been positive, but this might be a real silver lining of a very dark cloud. You know, not that it's needed, of course, but the realization of the vital importance of well-being, pupils, mental and physical well-being, but of course staff. That's coming more and more into people's conversations as well. I think Helen would call it the ABC, wouldn't Helen? From our discussions this morning, it's that well-being which fosters good attitudes and behaviour in school, and then you can start to engage with the curriculum. Supporting families, it's another area that schools use the PDG for. You can see the examples on the screen. So not just like an engagement or a welfare officer in school, but actually helping families engage with the life of the school, if you like, school trips, IT equipment. And I won't spend time talking too much long about the IT equipment because it's in today's pack that was sent out and you make reference to it, Councillor Jones, in your letter, and Councillor Rayner in her response to you. In particular, where you talk about 8,000 devices having been delivered in Swansea with more planned. Then I mentioned impact, you know, improved engagement. You think about the parent skills and relationships with school down the bottom, with those homework clubs and the programs they've got with supporting families and improving attendance. So some positive, really positive impacts there from the work that our schools are doing in Swansea. And the next slide then is, what do Estyn and Welsh Government, what's their advice and their guidance? Now, both of the Estyn document you can see is 2020, but the Welsh Government document on the right is actually, I think it's 2015, which is why it was in need of updating and revision. And I referenced the draft document that came out literally late last week. So that will be superseded in the coming weeks. But in both these documents, they talk about evidence and, you know, research-based approaches. And in the draft that I've seen very recently, again, it makes reference to the Education Endowment Foundation and the findings in England with regard to pupil premium. And it reiterates, it you know, talks about if you're doing something, do it on a strong evidence base. So they do actually make reference to what has not been as successful. So it doesn't say not at all successful. It says not as successful, because there's no doubt schools out there that will say some of what you're looking at on your screen has worked well for them. But based on a larger evidence base, the conclusion is that these approaches aren't as successful. Well, one thing to point out though is the just reducing TAs or class sizes isn't as beneficial if it works well. But my finance colleagues, when I asked them to comment on this presentation and PDG in general, they would encourage schools not to overcomplicate their plans. And the biggest expense for schools is always staff. So finance could sometimes, they would encourage schools, look, you've got a staff commitment, your staff will be working with these children, your grant can be used to offset staff costs, and then of course there's saving in your budgets, which you can then divert to the purchase of resources that the children can use. But that helps then when schools are audited, because if their PDG plans are too detailed in some respect, we're going to buy this and we're going to do that, then audit can actually sometimes pick them up, and it can create difficulty. So our finance team's advice would be, try to keep them relatively simple and things that can be easily audited. So Welsh Government's top 4, as was in the government that's still live, sorry, not in the document that's still live at the moment. You can see the number 1, well, that refers to feedback for pupils and teachers on their performance relative to learning goals. It can be effective in raising attainment if it's about challenging tasks or goals, and it focuses more on what's right than what is wrong, and encourages the learner. And then number 2, that refers to children being able to motivate themselves, plan and monitor their own learning. This is a well-proven high-impact approach. And with regard to 3, these approaches, pupils work in pairs or small groups to provide each other with explicit teaching support. The boost to attainment is provided by peer tutoring, and it boosts both the tutee and the tutor. Particularly in cross-age tutoring. And then the early intervention, number 4, research shows that high-quality early years provision with a strong educational focus, which supports early reading and then number concepts, is beneficial for disadvantaged children. And that philosophy, if you like, is reflected in our Flying Start settings as well, where they use the STEW approach, sustained shared thinking and emotional well-being. And making reference again to the draft guidance that I've seen, their top 2 are the same: effective feedback, metacognition, and self-regulation. It gives a case study on increasing engagement of vulnerable learners through well-being support. So there we are, that term again. And it talks about early intervention support and good practice for developing attendance. But again, there's a big focus on supporting pupils' well-being in that new guidance that is in draft form at the moment. There's Estin's top 10. Apologies if it's a little bit small. All of those strategies can be seen in Swansea schools, and they are reflected in the recommendations set by the local authority in May 2019. And you could probably, if you wanted to slim those down, they could probably come under the headings of professional learning or staff development and well-being. And then in addition, last couple of slides now, this is referred to again in the pack that was sent out, I think in Councillor Rayner's response to Councillor Jones's letter with regard to the PDG and the LAC. And the amount we get there. There's similar spend as I mentioned there. But one thing perhaps I could take the opportunity to, a drum that I enjoy beating and have for many years, is that the PDG LAC grant is for children who were formerly in care and have been adopted from care. And that, for me, that's an issue because we don't always know where they are. For obvious reasons, there's GDPR, there's privacy. So it's difficult then, though, for schools that might have quite a number of children who've been adopted from care to get the funding they receive, because there's no way for Welsh Government or the local authority to identify where they are, if that makes sense. And those children, just because they've been adopted from care, it doesn't mean that the support certainly in terms of well-being, suddenly doesn't exist anymore. It certainly does, and I can tell you that from experience. And I've taken that up and presented to Welsh Government and the Minister with regard to this, actually, when I was still a head teacher. And then finally, I hope you'd agree, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but some of the plans that schools have and the way they're spending it is innovative, and is having a positive impact on well-being and relationships with home and school. And the recommendations that the council set back in 2019 are being realised. And as I mentioned, we don't know our allocations for 21-22. I checked that before, literally I checked that this afternoon before coming into this meeting. And that, of course, can make it difficult. It's understandable at the moment that Welsh Government and local authorities are under pressure, but it does make it difficult for schools with regard to their planning. In terms of, will they have enough funding to maintain or even increase their staffing levels next year, or buy in that programme, My Concern or Language Link that we talked about earlier. So that can be difficult for schools, but I hope that gives you the update that you were after. So that's it for me. So I will now stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you very much, Damien, for an extremely thorough, briefing. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? And there is. Al Roberts. Al.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me. I've got some audio issues at my end. Thanks very much for your presentation. And I'm just got some questions, perhaps a comment really, just exploring the relationship between the pupil deprivation grant, that large amount of money, and the idea that we could somehow measure its effectiveness. What is the measure of success, if you like? This panel, this committee, has been exploring the problem that exists in our own county, that there are many children leaving primary education and going into secondary education, or even leaving nursery and going into primary education, and they're many years behind. This seems to be a real problem, and one that I'm not sure what the relationship between the pupil deprivation grant and that issue might be. It seems like it's a qualitative problem. By having the pupil deprivation grant, we make a difference, but it doesn't seem like we can tell how much of a difference we're able to make. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts might be on that, please.
Damien.
Yeah, I agree. It's really difficult to measure. I suppose the only way would be to have a bit like John, and I know John and his brother well. If you had twins and you had one twin who was in receipt of the intervention and the support, and one who wasn't. But this is, it's an experiment we wouldn't be able to carry out. But you are right. Has it made a difference? There's some really strong examples where relationships with home have developed. The professional learning that staff have engaged with, like attachment and ACEs, trauma informed. Which has come about because of the grant. It's allowed for that funding. So, like you say, Councillor Roberts, it's qualitative in that it improves the quality, I'd like to think. But yeah, it is difficult. I think there's a more, and I say this from my own point of view, from when I was a head teacher, my approach to spending it matured as evidence became more available to schools and good practice was shared through Estin or through the local authority. So I think we're getting better at spending it, if I might be so bold. And Welsh Government are getting better at allowing you to spend it and not being so restrictive. So I'm not really sure that answers your question, but I agree with the point that it's difficult to truly say this is we can't be doing without it. But I'm sure schools actually would there be hue and cry if it were taken away?
Well, just on that point, and I really appreciate your answer, Damien. As ever, there's a gap between funding and the requirement or the need And I'm just wondering what that conversation looks like in maybe 5 years' time, when that PDG grant perhaps doesn't stay in step with any kind of measure like inflation. How do we ask for more money? How do we create the evidence that we need more money to invest? Or how do we say, please don't cut our pupil deprivation grant if we don't have these measures? And I absolutely get that we can't hang, measures aren't everything, but, there is a conversation to be had there and evidence to be gathered. So I appreciate your answer.
Great, thank you, Al. And 2 hands up, Jen first, and then Helen. You're on mute, yeah.
Thank you. There certainly is a discussion to be held about this. And last year, schools, including ourselves via the Schools Budget Forum, and indeed the Assembly's Children and Young People's Committee, did ask for a full-scale inquiry into the question, how much does it cost to educate a child to a certain level? Now, we were a little disappointed at the final brief that came out for the school's funding review, but it did produce some interesting information, especially on variations across the country. And I think that is still ongoing. I am aware of, as Damien has said, we are getting better at this, not just in Wales, but the international research points in the same direction. And we in Swansea for many years have emphasised use research, what works, don't do knee-jerks, think about it, work in teams. And there's been considerable professional development here. And I think we have been able to illustrate that in the primary sector, moving from foundation phase into key stage 2, there is evidence of an achievement over and beyond what was evident early on. That in key stage 3, there is often a step backwards. So we perhaps need to look at that area in particular. And I noticed Damien said the new draft research highlights key stage 3. So there's 2 issues here. How much longer are we going to be dependent on additional funding via a grant mechanism? And we all know grants can come and go. PDG is notoriously late in its announcement. It goes out via the consortium and then gets redistributed. So there's 2 discussions there. How do we really finance schools without separate specialist grants? And also, if we do get grants, how do we ensure that we're maximising the impact for our pupils? And both are in, shall I say, in mid-debate.
Great, thank you very much. Helen.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Just to build on Jen's comments there in terms of maximising the use of any money, whether it's grant or any other type of money, I think over time schools have become really good at baselining and understanding starting points much better and realising that any interventions cannot be hopeful interventions anymore. They have to be planned for carefully, and that progress of individual learners needs to be tracked precisely. I think across Swansea, our schools are really good at doing this, and they realise that that can only be of benefit, really, not just for FSM pupils, but for all types of interventions around any type of vulnerability. So I think that precise tracking, and I think the whole system in Wales as well, will look to see if we've got enough around progress and achievement of pupils to build on, rather than having more focus on the attainment at the end of a key stage, but emphasising progress and achievement more as we move forward as a system in Wales.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No other hands up. So thank you very much. And again, Damien, thank you very much for that really comprehensive report, because give a real insight to what's been going on and what's in the pipeline as well. So thank you very much indeed. The next item on the agenda is ERU, Regional Education Improvement Service, and that is again both Jen and Helen. I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, I can confirm that we took a report to Cabinet this morning to defer withdrawal from ERU until the 31st of March. The report summarised the reasons. The report author was Helen, so you can hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Right. Helen.
Thanks, Jen. In terms of
rude, Helen.
No, that's fine. That's fine. In terms of the update, I'll come back to the issue of needing more time really to set up new consortia arrangements. But there has been today a stakeholder briefing in terms of the current position with ERU. So in the Joint Committee on the 9th of February, a number of decisions were made in terms of the future of regional school improvement services in our part of the world. So the current situation to date, as of today, is that the current consortium, which is named ERU, will continue until the 31st of August 2021. So the remaining partners from the 1st of April this year will be Carmarthenshire, Pembrokeshire, Powys and Swansea. So services to our schools in Swansea within our local authority will remain unchanged during the course of the next 5 months up until the 31st of August. So just to pick up where Jen left off on the need to continue within ERU for a further 5 months, there have been a number of impediments really that have slowed down the progress of entering into a new agreement around consortia arrangements. COVID has been one of them. COVID has hit key personnel in ERU. COVID has made us sort of stall on some of the meetings in terms of developing new thinking around the form and functions of ERU. But also we've had other considerations such as the expectations of Welsh Government, what they are for the future of consortia in Wales, not just in our part of the Wales, but generally speaking. And also consideration really of all partners and their positions across the 5 authorities that are currently in ERU. So for Ceredigion, from the 1st of April, they obviously will leave ERU, and they have informed us that they will enter into a loose partnership with Powys during this transitional year, but they are seeking a more formal partnership in years to come with Powys. So that is in line with their regeneration footprint for their part of the world. Neath Talbot Authority will continue to procure or commission some of the services that ERU provides up until the 31st of August this year. Specifically, they will procure leadership programme services from ERU, and they will continue to do that until a new arrangement is in place. So the implementation of our new partnership is hopeful in terms of commencing from the 1st of September. So those discussions are ongoing, and there are meetings between directors on a regular basis between now and the end of August. So we have received feedback from our schools here in Swansea to understand really their expectations of what they want any new partnership to deliver on their behalf. So we have a keen understanding of leadership programmes being something that our schools would wish a new entity to deliver on their behalf. Some elements of professional learning around the new curriculum. There's an expectation there from our schools that they would want that to continue in some shape or form after the 31st of August. Elements of equity, well-being and excellence in terms of the national mission from Welsh Government. There's an expectation from our schools that they would like to benefit from some of those services. However, we are very firm in our position in Swansea that school improvement really does rest within the local authority, and furthermore, school improvement rests on the shoulders of our schools. But in terms of our role, our function as a local authority here in Swansea to monitor and evaluate the work of schools, And that's evolved over time. It's not the same landscape as we had 5 years ago. So we are looking at it through a different lens now in terms of how we evaluate school improvement. And we want that to continue through our locally employed challenge advisors. And I have asked teams here in Swansea to consider that name, whether we want to call them challenge advisors going forward, and also to revise their job descriptions in light not just of the landscape across Wales, but how we look at things differently and how we need to monitor things differently in respect of our recovery plan as well. So there are a number of workshops with stakeholders, not just directors working up to work a new consortium arrangement up. We need to engage with the head teacher representative group in Ero, which is made up of primary and secondary, special and PRU head teachers. There will be workshops with HR officers and legal officers to make sure that we've got an appropriate legal agreement to start a new entity from the 1st of September. So much work to do, but we are in a positive position in understanding what our stakeholders want here in Swansea, what we need the consortium, that's a new consortium from September, to do for us, and also be very clear about what it doesn't do for us. And hopefully that will enable us to have some resource here in Swansea to continue to mature some of the plans we've got in terms of school improvement. So that's it in terms of update.
Thank you, Helen. I 1 or 2 points, because I sit on the Scrutiny book group for Eru. Could Mike, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Lyndon. Actually, your comment leads me into one of the questions I'd have, which I think probably could be encompassed within a general request. We know that things are changing. Would it be possible for us to receive a report as a scrutiny performance panel on, first of all, what the organisational arrangements will be for the revised arrangements, what the governance arrangements would be, and just picking up Lyndon's point, how the scrutiny will be performed, whether it comes within the remit of this particular panel, and also then looking at what the objectives might be and performance indicators for the new organisation going forward.
Thank you, Mike. Helen, do you want to possibly reply your?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Day. I'm really sorry, my dog is barking, but certainly any new organisational arrangements will be taken to Cabinet locally in each local authority to make sure there is a democratic oversight really in terms of the expectations of any new entity, and certainly we'll share the plans and the expectations, the governance model, and there will be a revised governance model, I'd like to add, to simplify some of the governance arrangements as well, so that we'll share everything with you.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Yes, just to echo what Helen has said, the minutes of the meetings of various sections of ERU, including the Joint Committee, are published. And perhaps we can send the link either directly to the ERU link or to the Carmarthenshire Democratic Services link, so you can follow the discussions there.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, the scrutiny body work raised a number of questions, and we've written to Councillor Emlyn Dole, who chairs the current ERU Joint Committee, because over the last number of years you've had the since its establishment, a number of managing directors in the current, in about 5 or 6 in so many years. You've also had a change of model where about 18 months ago they decided to take on more central staff, which was again different, because they started off by having staff from different local authorities and some central staff. Then you had more central staff. So that model now needs to be obviously winding down, and we heard that Swansea will join an arrangement from September. We'll join a new arrangement. Some of the concerns we had with where you get some authorities commissioning activities where we and then you get other authorities who are actually being the mainstay of that body, like we will be with Carmarthenshire and so on. So that was one issue we had. The other one, of course, is we're not clear really where, you know, when we say regional collaboration, each of the authorities seem to be coming back with different asks. So you get each authority having a different ask, and how does that all fit into a regional collaboration? And we're waiting, as I say, for Councillor Dole to come back with that information. Helen, your hand is up. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're very keen as directors, and the whole system is very keen to never repeat some of the mistakes that we've all encountered in terms of regional working. So there is a keen willingness to work to create an effective entity going forward. And in terms of commissioning, I would say that there is collaborative advantage in the sense that some of the national programmes for developing the profession in Wales are not within the gift of individual authorities to actually deliver on their own. So they would need to work in collaboration with other authorities to deliver on that scale. In terms of not wanting to repeat mistakes, there's also a clear imperative for our practitioners here in Swansea and our leaders here in Swansea that they do not become disadvantaged by some of the reformations that we've seen in regional working. So we need to get this right for our local teachers and head teachers. We need to ensure that they're not disadvantaged by other consortia in other parts of Wales working more effectively, and their workforce being developed accordingly. So we need to be really mindful that as we enter the business of another reformation, that we don't fall behind. Obviously, in terms of the commissioning of other authorities from other parts of Eru now that don't want to be part of a new entity, obviously we'll have to look at that carefully. What does that mean in terms of the cost? That we command really the correct amount of money in terms of offering those services. So we need to consider all these things very carefully. And I think we're in a fortunate position in Swansea that we can actually select what we want the consortium to deliver for us. Historically, we've had a one-size-fits-all approach. So this is a welcome departure in terms of being able to select exactly according to our clients, our schools, what they want, and to allow that to happen. As a Director of Education here in Swansea, I want the best of both worlds. I want to benefit from regional collaboration, but I also want some resource to develop some of the key programmes that we have here. Ultimately, this is about clarity of role and responsibility. We cannot have duplication. We cannot have a region doing one thing and then the local authority trying to do the same. There is no such luxury in the system anymore. So we need to be really careful that we have clarity of role and responsibility, and that we allow the region to do what's required and for local officers to do also what's required.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Helen. Yeah, thank you very much. Jen.
Thank you. Just to support what Helen was said, can I say thank you very much to Michelle for sending us the link to the Eru Scrutiny panel. Watching it, I was somewhat concerned as to were the councillors present fully briefed by their own local authorities? I think the Director of Education for Carmarthenshire handled the case extremely well. But I did pick up various themes that I thought maybe had not been shared either with the Joint Committee or in reverse order back to the councillors who were attending. What is clear is that there is great willingness to collaborate and there are benefits. Informally, we have huge links, as many of our former deputy heads, teaching staff, now hold headships across South West and Mid Wales. So we've got informal links. What is important is to remember that this is a school improvement service. It deals specifically with improvements in schools, teaching and learning for the benefit of pupils. What the ERO cannot do, or any successor, is fill in the gaps in authorities where certain decisions, political decisions, as to who is a governor, what the funding is, that's not the job of a regional school improvement service. And I think too often ERO has been sucked into trying to make up shortfalls, which, as Helen has said, are rightly the responsibility of the local authority, and the local authority education service needs to concentrate on its key role, which is education, schools, and wider skills development for a developing economy. So I would suggest next time you have a scrutiny meeting, ahead of the scrutiny meeting, that there is a check made that everyone attending has had the full conversation with their department and their director before actually attending. Otherwise, we're going to go on having cross-purpose meetings, and scrutiny has a much more important role than setting up misviews, shall I say. So I'm sure you'll be able to respond to that, Lyndon.
I'll certainly raise that with the other members of the scrutiny panel. I'm fortunate in the sense that I do speak to Helen Morgan-Rees on a regular basis. So in that sense, I'm in a fortunate place. I can't say about the other authorities, but there were concerns raised, and as I say, and not least, it must deliver value for money as well. And I think that's really important, because every time we make this mistake, and as I say, we've gone down 5, 6 managing directors in X number of years, 5 years or 4 years, whatever it is. I've certainly been through about 5 or 6 since I've been on that scrutiny body. You know, it all costs money, and that takes money out of the education system. You know, all these mistakes. So we need to get that right. And there's an opportunity to do that. And I think the lines that went to Helen, the points that Helen made, were extremely useful and valuable.
Just a point of information, we have not had 5 or 6 managing directors.
Or acting ones, or now their role has changed into 2 different bodies as head of service.
Yes, and before that, we just had an acting one. Thank you to the Welsh Government for that. And before that, we had 1 long-term managing director.
Quite a few.
Sorry?
I said quite a few.
Quite a few what? We had 1 managing director.
Quite a few staff running the service. As I say, quite a few staff running the service. Different staff, I should say. Okay, any other questions? Okay, can we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the work programme? Okay, there we go. I've got two hands up, and the first one is Sue Jones. Sue.
Thank you, Lyndon. Over the last few weeks, I've been involved with the planning application on a site in Gowerton, and it came regarding the 106 agreement and the involvement of the education department, which totally confused people. So I would like to put on the work programme, if possible, and education with the planning department.
Okay. Right, well, you know, obviously it's not, we can't discuss planning issues here, obviously, but if an agreement has been made by the Department of Education, then we can scrutinise that decision. If a decision has been made, we can scrutinise that, and that's up to the committee. Could we have a show of hands?
Can I just step in, Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think what Susan Jones is relating to came up in the planning permission last month, or early this month. I think it would be a bit out of order trying to implement it into the scrutiny.
We can't talk about planning issues, that's for certain.
It isn't the planning that has been approved. It is the relationship with education, the 106 agreement, and the focusing of pupils within schools. Yes. That seems to be hit or miss.
Okay. Right, thanks, Sue. We've got a couple of other hands up first before we do that. That's Councillor Mike Day.
I wondered if Helen wanted to comment first of all on that particular point before I came in.
Yeah, Helen, would you want to come in? Do you want to come in?
Thank you, Councillor Day. In response to Councillor Jones, it is noted, obviously, there were concerns on the 2nd of March in that planning committee. My suggested approach, it's already calendared for next week. I am meeting with Councillor Lloyd as chair of that planning committee, and I'm more than happy to meet with yourself, Councillor Jones, as part of that meeting before I write to the planning committee. So my intention is already, it's in the calendar to meet with Councillor Lloyd as chair, and then to write to allay any kind of misunderstandings and to provide a factual account really of what's happened. Would that be good enough from your perspective, Councillor Jones?
That's Councillor Sue Jones you're talking to. Sue.
Yeah, sorry, Sue Jones, yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's not me.
Yes, I really would like to meet regarding it, because there are issues that were highlighted in that planning department. But I think as a councillor, it seems to be something that we don't understand, and that's my concern. And our scrutiny, I think maybe we need to be looking at that, yeah?
Okay. Thanks. We've got Councillor Mike Day then.
Yeah, thanks, Lyndon. I just wondered, I know that there's a specific issue which Sue's concerned about, and thanks to Helen for following that up. But I wondered if within the report that we're going to consider in May, talking about the schools programme, whether there could be just like a little overview of Section 106 payments generally, and how they find their way into education and supporting what's going on. And the other question I just had was in connection with the work programme for the next meeting in April. Would it be possible for us to find out from Estin, it might not require this, but what their kind of programme is? Obviously, everything's been on hold in terms of inspections and everything, but have they got any plans for coming back to doing inspections in the forthcoming academic year? So just something really in connection with what their arrangements are going to be for undertaking education inspections.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sounds quite a sound idea. Councillor Jen Rayner. Jen.
Thank you. I think Councillor Day's suggestion on Estin looking forward as we go into a different phase is an excellent idea. On the 106, I would say 106 agreements are a matter for the planning department. If people do not understand 106 agreements in planning, because the agreement for 106 is made not with the education department, but legally through the planning department, then I think the place to look at that is to ask the planning department to lay on additional training. Because I watched that meeting and I was somewhat concerned at the failure to grasp some of the issues behind it. You might not like it, but the purpose of that planning meeting was to look at a planning issue, which was a change in the provision of houses and a subsequent fallout from that.
Can I come back on that one, please, Linda?
Certainly, Sue, yes. Yeah.
You saw the planning meeting, and there was concern about the reduction that the education 106 amount was reduced to, and the fact that the 106 is being reduced for the developer to the site. And why are we reducing and allowing developers to get away with not agreeing to 106 that they originally agreed with.
Can I repeat, Councillor Jones? That is a question for the planning department. The education department does not handle planning applications. We respond to requests from the planning department.
And they agreed to the reduction in the amount of money at this time when money is so short.
Right. Councillor Mike Dirk. You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, I was. Thank you, Chair. Just bringing the education scrutiny meeting back to education for a minute. When we're looking ahead to May, the meeting on the 13th of May, education other than at schools, EOTAS provision, right? Obviously, I'm excited as an educator about this. Obviously, as a Cockay councillor, I am particularly excited about this. And can I just put a question mark in here? I remember many years ago, the education of disadvantaged pupils, 20 years, it's a rumbling, it goes on and on from decade to decade, and always will. But in the EOTAS context, we're talking about specialist provision and engaging children and young people, often most vulnerable, often from the most challenged circumstances. Now, what works? Can we look for input there about what works, how we push the buttons? And can I pick up on a couple of points here that I was going to raise earlier, but I thought I'll leave it until now. Professor Alma Harris always used to say that schools should never be seen as islands in the communities. So when we think about school improvement resting with the schools, we need to pause, I'd suggest, on that and think that it does take a village to raise a child. So in that context, opening out and spreading those community links are often incredibly important and valuable in keeping the young person on a right path. And the answers lie outside of the school, you know? So looking at integrating schools into community, into the rugby club, into the football club, into the whatever the links might be, looking at education with innovation and imagination, led by what works by specialists in this context, might be an interesting and fascinating way for us. And I am an educator, I do say this, I mean, I've taught for a long time now, but sometimes we're all guilty of our blinkers getting on a bit too fixed, and we see the world through education blinkers. That's what we see. Pulling those off offers some great possibilities for improving education, I think, regionally and locally, and particularly for our most disadvantaged pupils. And I would also add in there, I know I'm going on a bit, sorry about that, but what I'd add in there as well is, why not look through our university system, target formally looked after children who successfully graduate from universities, and ask them to inform the process of change. What kept them on the educational path at primary and senior school? How the heck did they achieve when the vast majority of looked after young people fall by the wayside way earlier than getting to university? You know, and push those buttons for more children. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's a very good point, and you know, I know that is important to make sure, you know, to see that we, you know, what we can do and to maximise people's opportunities. So yes, indeed. Right. Okay. I take it, you know, obviously Councillor Sue Jones mentioned too many Joneses. Councillor Sue Jones mentioned about bringing that to this committee, but by the sound of it, people are saying it's not actually education; it is a planning issue. So I think we need to take advice on that and leave them and move it in that direction. Okay. Other than that, that's our work program, and I think that is it. Could I say thank you all for your attendance. Can't hear you, Jen. You're on silent.
I wonder if we could put some flesh and bones on Mike Dirk's suggestion. I don't know if it's possible for Professor Alma Harris to actually visit I'm not sure how she's placed time-wise. Or, as Mike has suggested, maybe we find some of our LAC pupils who have gone on to considerable success. And I know we have supported not a huge number, but a noticeable number through into higher education and into employment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that would be quite exciting because, and there's an opportunity using Teams to actually get somebody along more easily than if we were asking anybody to actually attend a meeting and actually attend a meeting, rather than virtually. So yeah, no, most certainly. I'll obviously we'll speak to Michelle at the hour after the meeting, and we'll see how we can progress that, and perhaps through you, Mike, work on that. And I can see Helen's put her hand up. Helen.
Yeah, just to say that Councillor Dirk's ideas is great. We do have a recent Oxbridge pupil from Swansea who's a female LAC student in one of our socially kind of challenged contexts. So I'm really keen to explore that issue, not just in terms of scrutiny, but in a wider sense as well, in terms of that person being a good ambassador to come back and talk to us as officers and to elected members, but also more importantly to other students across Swansea.
Great, thanks. Let's progress that then. Yeah, thank you very much. Right, well, thank you all for attending. Have a pleasant evening, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Good evening.
Bye.